Buried beneath the rubble of time are stories of God's sovereign hand moving in our great nation. Many believers, hopeless, frustrated, and confused, have all but given up on America. But we have faced dark times before, and by divine providence, overcome. From our studio on Capitol Hill, I'm your host, Brad Wells, with Pastor Mike Creed, Joe Kirby, and Andrew Friedenstein. We have memorialized the sacrifice of soldiers who died for our freedom. Today, we look at the sacrifice of those who live. Take a moment with us to look back and find hope from history.
Today, we're going to look at a story from the Vietnam War. A major military offensive was underway known as Operation Birmingham. And there was a Lieutenant Frank d'Orsay. I believe I'm saying his last name right. Mm-hmm. He and his platoon was assigned to assist in the loading up of helicopters. How Vietnam worked most of the time when they would do a major offensive is they would use helicopters to ferry the soldiers into an area, and then the helicopters would fly back to base and pick up more soldiers or supplies, food, ammunition, then ferry those back and forth. And that's how those offenses work, because the jungle was so dense and such a mountainous region. And so his job and his platoon, they were at base, and their job was to load up the helicopters with supplies. So it was very hot, very hard work. It was under pressure. It was constant. You're moving, massive totes, with helicopters, because the goal, of course, with the helicopter is to be on the ground as short as time as possible.
Right.
And so they're doing this. They're loading the helicopters up. But after they do this a couple times, the helicopters come back, and the chief there on the helicopter signaled to them to don't load up the helicopter, come over here and help me unload something from the helicopter. So this time the helicopter actually brought something back. And so the lieutenant and his men run over there, and they look inside the helicopter, and they are completely shocked by what they see, and they recoil. And the helicopter is completely full of body bags.
Wow.
Some of the body bags are torn open, and
wow.
They see these soldiers that have been shot, that had mortars hit them. I mean, just mangled and killed in horrible ways. Mm. And of course, all the men are just shocked by what they're seeing. That's not what they were expecting.
Right.
But the lieutenant, though, he's leading these men. He knows what's got to happen. He knows he has to unload these body bags as quick as possible and then load up the supplies that the soldiers that are still out there, still fighting, need. And he's got to do that as quick as possible. So as he describes it, he put his emotions in kind of a deep, dark corner of his mind, and just reached in there, grabbed a bag, and just started yanking on it. He told himself, don't think about it, it's only bags. He begins unloading one, then he turns around, shouts at his men, and says, don't think about it, just do your job.
Wow.
And so all the men start dragging these bodies out as quickly as possible.
Right.
Laying them down. Again, you want to treat them with respect, but
sure.
The people who are still alive are depending on these supplies that they're trying to get in seconds matter. And so getting them out as quickly as they can and putting them back. And they had to do this all day, and again, every time they would launch an offensive, he would do this. And he said he got better at putting his emotions in a deep, dark corner of his mind, as he said it. And he continued to do that. And his feelings just never entered the picture. He didn't process what he was seeing. Well, he left. Of course, the war was over. He survived the war, praise the Lord, and he goes home. But like so many soldiers, especially during the Vietnam era, they struggled with coming home. He ignored his emotions in everyday life, and then what would happen, though, is it would kind of just his emotions would fill up, and then they would just boil over on his family, on who's ever around him, and he just had a hard time with it. And he admits that it took him years and even decades to kind of back into an even keel. It was one of those sayings that the soldier left the battlefield, but the battlefield didn't leave the soldier.
Right.
I was thinking about Pastor Don Chitty, We had him for our Veterans Day a few years ago. He's a pastor in New Mexico to the Navajo Indians, and God has used him greatly, but he shared with me this same situation about how it comes back. He literally has 3 Purple Hearts. He was on the battlefield, was wounded. Literally, they thought he was dead, put him in a body bag, loaded him in a helicopter, and as he got up in the air, one of the fellows said, "Sir, we have one moving." And he said, "No, that's just muscles, and that's just kind of some reflexes." He said, "No, sir, we have one moving." They unzipped it, and he wakes up in the helicopter, wounded, in a pile of body bags.
Wow.
And he shared the experience, and he said, "I'll never get over it." Honestly, it's affected him, and just in sudden things that happen around him.
Yeah.
You can't sneak up on him,
No.
and he's a man's man.
Right.
But when I think about this sacrifice, it's amazing
Yes.
to understand. We live in this country. We wake up every morning. We never think about this type of thing. But these folks have experienced great sacrifice, being wounded,
Right.
and now they come back here, and it's still there in their mind.
Exactly right. And we as individuals, we talk with soldiers, and of course we respect them and we honor them. But it's really hard to understand unless you're in the situation that they sacrifice. They didn't make the ultimate sacrifice, praise the Lord, but they have to. They've been fundamentally changed in a way by the things they've seen. Maybe physical trauma, mental trauma, emotional. And so to help us with this, we have a guest today.
Yeah.
Retired Captain Scott Miller is on the phone with us.
In the Army.
In the Army, that's right. Not the Navy, the Army. The best branch of the military, right, Scott?
That's right.
And so, Scott, how long did you serve in the Army?
Well, I've got 20 years total. I've got a combination of both of National Guard, Reserve, and active duty.
Well, first of all, thank you for your service, and what a blessing it is just to have men like you that would be willing to serve. And praise the Lord that you made it back, because you were over in the Middle East during our recent wars. Can you kind of tell us just maybe how many years you spent overseas and what your role was?
Well, I was an embedded trainer with the Afghan Army. That meant that I actually lived with and trained the Afghan soldiers to stand up their army.
How was their food?
How
was the food over there, Scott?
Actually, a lot of people got sick from the food. I did not. I contribute that to the years that I had to suffer with my sisters learning how to cook.
Oh, my soul. I hope she's not listening today.
Oh, both my sisters. I tell you, they were a mess. We had to eat. My family was not very well off. We weren't poor per se, but whatever was put in front of us, we had to eat. And when they were learning how to cook.
So you did that in Afghanistan. Okay.
Right. So when I was in Afghanistan, I actually enjoyed a lot of the food. They have this bread that they have over there. It's called naan bread, and it's a flatbread, and it is fantastic. It is one of my favorite things that I remember about Afghanistan.
So what was it? So you're over there. How long were you over there again?
I was there 3 weeks shy of a year.
Okay. And so you're over there. What was it that you did on a daily basis as a captain? What was your role?
Well, I was on a team. We were supposed to have 11 people on our team, but we only had 8, and we trained the soldiers. We literally got them from basic training when they did their basic training, which is a lot more relaxed than ours. Theirs is 3 weeks long. Ours is 8 weeks long, and then we literally would train them how to do things that soldiers would do, 3 to 5 second rushes, how to zero your weapon, how to do a formation, how to go out and do your combat routine kind of thing, how to search a building and that kind of thing. And we did that for like anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, depending on how good these soldiers were. And then we literally started doing missions, going outside the wire and going patrolling and looking for bad guys.
I heard your time there got cut short. What happened? What kind of injury or accident cut your time off there in Afghanistan?
Well, I was out on a patrol with with Sergeant Wayne Cornell. He's an E5 that I did a lot of my patrols with, and we were actually on our way back from being out for 14 days, and we came to a riverbed that we normally cross or actually drive on, but it's normally dry, and it's called a wadi, is what that is. And but there was a lot of water in it this time, and about 6 to 8 inches of water, and we decided we could make it across, and we were gonna continue on our way. And Sergeant Wayne Cornell, when he got to the water, he hit it kind of hard, and a wall of water came up, and I'm in the turret, and oh no, and I got splashed with water. I didn't get soaked, but because I did have my Gore-Tex on, but I did get wet. Mm-hmm. And we made it across the riverbed without too many problems. And when we got back on the main road, we're driving, and we had about another hour before we got back to our fire base. When I got to the fire base, I could feel that my face was very numb, and my lips were very swollen. And I said something to Sergeant Cornell. I said, "Hey, do my lips look bad?" And he said, "Well, you do look different, sir, but I think you're just cold from it. It was so cold out. It was 32 degrees." And
wow.
Okay, all right. You're probably right. All right, go ahead and take care of yourself, and I'll see you in 2 days. You got 2 days off, and I'll see you when you get back. And so that night, about 4 o'clock in the morning, I was in bed asleep, and all of a sudden my eye just came open, and I couldn't close it. And I really thought I was dreaming. I didn't really put two and two together at the time. And so I took my hand, closed my eyelid, and I put my face back on the pillow, and I went back to sleep. And about 5:30, 6 o'clock, people were starting to get up and get ready for the day, and I was off, so I was trying to sleep through everybody getting ready and whatnot. I kind of rolled over, and Master Sergeant I shared a tent with, he saw my face, and he's like, sir, something's wrong. You really are messed up. And I said, no, I'm fine. I sat up, and left side of my face had completely collapsed. My cheek literally was dangling, and my left side of my mouth was open. I couldn't close it, and my eyelid would not close. It would stay wide open. And the colonel I shared a tent with, a lieutenant colonel, he said, Captain, you're having a stroke. I said, I'm not having a stroke. Long story short, they ended up medevacing me because they were afraid I was having a stroke. 2 years I was at Walter Reed as a patient, actually 2 years and 3 months to the day. I was a patient at Walter Reed. And after being there my first 6 months, they finally diagnosed me, I'm not making this up, as MUPS, medically unexplained physical symptoms. And for a year and a half, that's what my diagnosis was. And because they couldn't prove I didn't have anything in my bloodstream to show that I had a nerve agent, so they couldn't. That's why I never got a Purple Heart.
So during all this time, you really don't know what's happening.
Correct.
You don't know. Your wife doesn't know what's
Correct.
going on, and you're just kind of in this limbo as all these doctors are running all these tests and trying to figure out, bringing in this specialist, and I'm going to call this specialist, and all this stuff is happening, and you're just hoping that.
And on top of that, they call you a mutt. Okay, and
no, I think it was MUPS.
Oh, MUPS. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
So would they attribute this? Is this like a PTSD type of thing, or is that what they would call that?
No. PTSD is a psychological disorder that a lot of soldiers come home with. 100% come home with at least phase one. There's 5 different phases of PTSD, and 100% of soldiers that actually that go out and do any type of missions on a regular basis come back with at least a level 1. And level 1 is where you're hypersensitive of your surroundings. The slightest noise behind you, especially, you turn to see what's going on. You always see whoever comes through the door. You pay attention to whoever comes through the door. You're aware of exits. When you walk into a room, the first thing you look for is an exit. And it's more because when you're out and about, you have to be aware of what's going on around you. And the higher you go in the PTSD, in other words, once you get to a level 5, you get extremely angry very easily. You're very paranoid of anything that's you can't see. If there's something going on outside that you can't see what's going on, you're very nervous about what's going on outside. You can hear people talking, but you don't know why they're talking. Well, what's going on? What are they plotting against me? Are they doing something to hurt people here? Your back is always to the wall.
Wow.
You always have your back to the wall.
Well, you have
so that
really,
somebody can't come up behind you.
Scott, you have really come a long way. God has blessed you, being in our church and serving there, and even being the deacon, and we appreciate your sacrifice and how God used you there in Afghanistan.
Well, the support that my wife and I have received from the church is there's just no words for it. The people have welcomed my wife and I with open arms and have given us nothing but support and encouragement from the first day we've been there. Yeah. I can't say enough good things about the church and the people in the church.
Well, what I think, thank you so much for talking with us today and to our listeners, but I really think what you brought home through your physical injuries, talking about the PTSD some, is that, again, a soldier can leave the battlefield, but he carries the things that happened there with him as he tries to get back into quote-unquote a normal life. But that transition isn't always smooth. It's very difficult for some people. But in reality, though, they're going through that on our behalf because they're serving on our behalf and for our country. And we here as Americans that are not in active duty need to remember that and be that support that they need. And the hope element that we can draw from this, guys, is that this is, the conversation about PTSD. More and more people are becoming aware of it, as we should. But to me, the encouraging thing about it is we still have today people signing up to preserve and protect our country in our military, knowing that they're going to face some of these things, knowing that they're going to have a hard time if they go to the battlefront with, coming back to quote unquote the normal life, the homeland, and reintegrating once they retire from the service. But they're still willing to go through that, to make that sacrifice, to keep on living on our behalf. And that's just amazing. It's a great testament to our people and our citizens as Americans.
Well, I appreciate you saying all that. The thing with PTSD is a lot of people don't know that it stands for post-traumatic stress disorder, and it's usually a combination of tragedies that happen to a person that stays with them. And some people, it manifests over time and becomes even more and more terrorizing as they go on. And it's something that definitely people need to know more about and be forgiving of when people start to act out with it, because it's not something a person can control. Yes, there's medication for it, but that's even suspect in helping a person control it. So anyway, I appreciate you shedding light on this. I really do.
I'm just so moved today, thinking about the sacrifice of others and what all has been given for me, for each one of us individually. Of course, it's given for all, but it's given for each, and that is something we must be able to understand, and we've got to incorporate into our daily lives in order to be worthy of the sacrifice that was paid.
Yeah, it's given to all, but has to be individually appreciated.
That's it. Wow. There is hope because we are surrounded and blessed by men and women who are willing to continue to pay the price of war. Be sure to listen each week and find more hope from history. Learn more on our website, awakeamericaonline.org. Subscribe, share, consider partnering with us in prayer.